All right, chiropractor. Since my last video on general Google Ads tips, some things have changed. So I wanted to go ahead and give the updated Google Ads tips as of the date that this video comes out. If you don't know, my name's Gavin. I'm with Central Health Supply. Basically, we help chiropractors with the business side of things and growing their practice so that they can focus on patients and patient care while still having a growing practice. And one of those things is that we help with is Google Ads. So let's go ahead and jump into the Google Ads tips and the updated Google Ads tips so that you can run some good Google Ads and make some money that way. So some updates since the last Google Ads video was smart campaigns were phased out. And previously I mentioned that I thought those were probably the best for most chiropractors. My rationale was they were super easy to set up. They basically do a bunch of stuff that you would need multiple other campaigns in order to do. And most chiropractors aren't spending enough money to warrant having multiple of those other campaigns. So like example, you would need probably like 2 or 3 search campaigns to mimic the function of one smart campaign, just because the smart campaign would show in multiple different areas across Google. And so because of that, I thought they were just like pretty good for most people. They worked like 80% of the time really well. Since then, they've been phased out. And so now Performance Max campaigns have basically replaced the smart campaigns. I've also done some more testing, so I have some more learnings since then, aside from just the changes that Google has made. And so Performance Max is now, it's like the upgraded version of Smart Campaigns, but it is a little bit more complex and takes a little bit more to set up. Like it's not as super easy and simple as Smart Campaigns. The main difference is it's shown across more Google Ads products. So for instance, Smart Campaigns would usually only show on search results and then they map. Performance Max campaigns can show on search results, maps, YouTube, a bunch of other stuff. It also has better machine learning. And so you can basically, to go along with that, it also has more ad variations. So basically you plug in a whole bunch of different ads at once and then it tests all of those in combination to find the best ad combinations and ads, whereas previously there would be more manual testing with smart campaigns. So it does make it a little bit easier in terms of like there's less, it takes a little bit of control away, which I didn't like previously, but the machine learning has since then gotten just so much better that it doesn't even matter. And so, yeah, it's fine now, but big caveat, it does take more data to actually get right. If you don't give it enough data from, enough ad variations, broad enough targeting, long enough time running, it doesn't perform very well. And so because of this, it can have a pretty slow start initially. And so generally, the big strategy I have now done with that is I have Performance Max brings in the impressions top of funnel calls. So it has broader keywords, you have broader search terms, ads and stuff like that. And then the search campaigns try and clean up the bottom end of the funnel. And so they're more targeted. They try to match keywords exactly with the ads. If you still have some smart campaigns, you can test them against the search campaigns. So instead of having search campaigns, you just have smart campaigns. They may work better in smaller markets if you have the smart campaigns, at least from our testing. They work better in smaller markets than search campaigns. But that being said, the Performance Max usually kind of needs data, and search campaigns, I think, usually are where you get that data. And so if you have the search campaigns, they're very targeted. They can, you know exactly what you're looking for with that, right? So you're trying to say, okay, chiropractor, for instance, chiropractor to help with sciatica, and then you just match the ad against that says, we help with sciatica, we're a chiropractor, something like that, right? And so this can give Google overall enough data that it feeds your Performance Max so that Performance Max gets better. And so, sometimes Performance Max, if you don't have a lot of data, if it's a new Google Ads account, you might just want to say only search campaigns for maybe like a month or two, and then you can bring in Performance Max and try that. And then at that point, usually, assuming you do everything else right and give it enough ads and stuff like that and broad enough search terms, at that point, it has enough data from the previous search campaigns to know how to run things well, and it kind of takes off. The other thing you can do is once you have enough data and it's bringing enough conversions and clicks, is you could test only Performance Max, no search campaign, no nothing else. We've tested this a little bit. It's kind of iffy on whether or not it brings in more conversions overall, more conversions, phone calls and clicks and all that stuff overall compared to combining it with search campaigns and stuff like that. I think it just kind of depends on the market and depends on your exact situations. So testing is still the name of the game. This is, a big thing that I talked about in the last video, and I still think it's the main thing. So if you don't know if something works, just test it. And weekly tests are usually the sweet spot, sometimes longer if you're in a small area, if you don't have enough data. And then usually you want to test different ad sets and look at overall trends, or different ads. It just kind of depends on where you're at. But in general, campaigns are broken into campaigns, ad sets, and then ads. And then ads are broken into headlines, images, descriptions, etc. Nowadays with Performance Max, basically you have like an ad set, and then you just fill in all the ad data. So you fill in all your headlines, all your images, all your descriptions, and then just creates ads for you. And so because of that, you're generally going to be testing ad sets as opposed to ads, specific ads, which is previously we would test ads specifically with stuff like smart campaigns and all that stuff. Now with performance maxing campaigns, you don't necessarily do that. You test ad sets in general, and then you look at the overall trends, and then you decide where to go. So for instance, if you say, okay, we're going to test something where we basically only mention that we're a chiropractor in this area, and then this other one, we're going to mention how many patients we've helped. Maybe you see that, okay, the chiropractor, saying we are a chiropractor in X area, it does better than saying we've helped, 3,000 patients. And so then we look at the trends, and so then we just keep testing stuff until we find overall trends, and then we can maybe combine it all into a really good ad set. We could just keep multiple ad sets. Again, that's that's something to test for you, specific, certainly. But again, testing is still the name of the game. It's still, I think, the most important thing to do. So another helpful learning since then, Q4 tends to be pretty slow. I don't think I ever mentioned this, but Q4 tends to be slow, and it's because people start spending for the holidays, and so they pay less attention to local businesses. This just happens for pretty much every local business out there. The other thing that happens is big companies, so like Amazon, all of those ones, they start increasing their ad spend massively because it's Black Friday, we're getting ready for the holidays, and so it just kind of drowns out ads for local businesses. Even if they're not necessarily competing in the exact same search terms, there's just so much more noise that it's hard to break through. So there are things that can be done to minimize this, to minimize the Q4 slowdown, but in general, you should probably still expect it to slow down from the ads front. Now, this doesn't mean that it's not valuable during this time. If you do it right, if your ads are still good, then your ads can still be very profitable. It's just not as profitable as the rest of the year, right? And so you might have, maybe you have a 10x ROI right the rest of the year, and then Q4 it slows down to a 2 to 5x. That's still a return, right? It's still positive return. It's just not the 10x return that we were seeing the rest of the year. And so again, that's just something that I've noticed across all clients. I think it happens across pretty much every local business out there. I just wanted to mention it because I don't think I've mentioned this before. And, it's helpful to know. Otherwise, you're going to be freaking out in Q4 going, what's going on? Why are our ads so terrible? And that's not fun. So do expect it to slow down during Q4. But if you know your numbers, if you pay attention correctly, you should be able to see that it is still profitable. It's just not as profitable previously. Another thing, I have not mentioned this, but this is helpful to know. If you hire a Google Ads team, it can be us, it can be anyone else. But I have noticed there's some confusion as to whether, what kind of a Google Ads agency people should hire, chiropractors specifically. And so it's helpful to know the different kinds out there. So there are usually two strategies out there that Google Ads teams or agencies will go with, and those are the set it and forget strategy and then the actively managed strategy. So set it and forget it, they're usually pretty cheap, but they don't do anything after the initial setup. So you basically just pay for tech support. So what that means is they find a strategy that has worked 60, 80% of the time, and it's worked in most markets for most chiropractors, in most places. And then they set that up initially, and then they forget about it. And so after that, you're basically just paying for tech support, and they only do something if you go and you call them and say, hey, my ads are not doing very good. They're not working as well. They don't give you most of the time, they don't give you a report on whether your ads are even doing good. So it's just kind of like a guess as to whether it's working. And then if you just notice a slowdown, you call them, and then they start doing something. But again, it's basically just kind of like tech support, and they only really do anything if you bother them. It's cheap. It's maybe a couple $100 a month. So it's not super expensive, but they kind of just don't do a whole lot to continue to improve your ads. And another thing I should probably mention here, ads over time tend to get what's referred to as ad blindness, where basically people see the same ads over and over and over again, so they start ignoring it, right? You probably see this, in yourself, right? Where you're just like, okay, I've seen this ad before, skip it. It's not interesting at all. And so the exact same thing happens. So if you're not actively managing, if you're not actively testing new stuff and testing new ads, materials, stuff like that, then that you just kind of have a decline in quality and ad return just in general. And so that's kind of one of the downsides of set it and forget it. The different kind is actively managed. And so they work with you and they consistently work on your ads week after week, or whatever that testing cadence is, but they're really expensive. And so for local businesses, often the fees from the actively managed Google Ads agencies, or really any kind of agency out there that actively manages your stuff, often their fees are more than the ad costs. And so, generally that's not that great, and it reduces your return quite a bit. And so if you want us to do this for you, we strike a happy balance between the two strategies we just talked about. So we're on the actively managed, more on the cheaper side, and that's because we focus on the 80-20. So we focus on the 20% of things that make the 80% of the results, as opposed to actively managed, which usually does all of it, which is why it's so expensive. We focus on the few things that matter, and then we also do a lot of automation so that there's things can also be cheaper. And so if you'd like to, if nothing else, learn about it, you can always say no once you learn more about it. But if you'd like to at least learn about it, you can go to centralhealthsupply.com/ads, and we can talk and see if we can help you. If we can't, we'll send you some good resources and some good tips and give you good direction to go. But either way, I hope all this info was helpful, and I'll talk to you soon.